Hi, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Mountain Forums. My name is Jacob. I'm one of the content marketing leads here at Mountain, and I'm going to be your moderator for today. Just in case you forgot, it's officially the first week of summer, and I'm sure everyone has vacations on their mind, which is why in today's forum, we'll be talking about travel advertising, how the industry is faring in our current economic climate, and what the performance capabilities of connected TV can do to help. Now I'd like to bring on today's guest, Judge Howell, Head of Marketing at ID90 Travel. Judge, take a moment and tell the folks at home a little bit about yourself.
Thanks, Jacob. As you mentioned, my name is Judge Halb. I'm the head of marketing at ID90 Travel. I've been with the company for about a year and a half now. Prior to that, I was running a digital advertising agency in Dallas and bring about 10 years of both agency as well as corporate marketing experience to the table.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. And before we kick off the conversation, I just wanted to remind everyone that we will have some time for a Q&A at the end of today's session. So if you have a question for Judge, drop that into the Q&A chat you see on your screen. All right, Judge, let's get this forum rolling. Now,
Perfect.
before we get into the specifics of your work with ID90 Travel, I want us to take a second and look at the big picture. Now, last year, travel advertisers spent big, and studies show that 5.2 billion travelers are going to fly in 2025, which is a 6.7 increase year over year. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw, similar gains in other pockets of the industry, like cruises or hotel accommodations. But as everyone knows, over the past several months, the economy has been turbulent, to say the least. So, from your perspective, Judge, how does all of that affect how you think about marketing?
Sure. Well, I mean, like you said, it's the economy's been very turbulent, and one of the things that we look at is that leisure travel is not a necessity. When people are wanting to plan their vacations, that's not something they need to do. It's a want, right? And so we know people want to travel. We've seen the interest there. We've seen, our search volume is up, our traffic is up. We know that the industry traffic is up on a number of kind of the big sites, and so with that in mind, we know people want to travel. We know the interest is there, but they may be waiting for either more economic stability or they're traveling differently. And one of the things that we think about a lot is, and we have a couple studies that we just recently did where we know that hotel search traffic across the industry, not just for us, but hotel search volume is down 20% year over year, but cruise search volume is up 40%. And so it may not be that they're not traveling; it's that they're traveling different. And it could be, as simple as, hey, instead of booking a flight and a hotel at a tropical destination, maybe they're packing up the car and driving to the lake, and spending the weekend up there. And I think trying to figure out how to plan those vacations and those trips cost effectively.
All right. So, oh, please go ahead.
Oh, no, go for it.
Thought you had another thing there. All right, so that's just like a small snapshot of that big picture of the industry. So let's start diving in to your specific work with ID90 Travel. So from what I understand, you have a very specific audience. So can you explain a little bit about your business and kind of what makes it unique within the industry?
Sure. So I would say first and foremost, I'm going to take kind of a little step back from our end users. So at the core of what ID90 provides, it is a technical platform and a technical service to airlines, really to help them manage their employee travel better. And so with that in mind, one of the big perks of working for any airline is the ability to travel on those airlines pretty cheaply or much less than retail rates. And so this is important for us because they our airline employees, they don't have to book or flights, or they not that they don't have to book flights, they don't have to spend money on flights. They can spend that money elsewhere. And so we realized bringing in these airline employees lets us then serve up deals to them from a hotel standpoint, cars, cruises, etc., and really help them make the most of their flight benefits. And when we think about our users, we really have three key sections of end users. We have airline partner employees, which are employees that work for an airline we partner with, that they use our flight tools Those employees can then book flights on us. They can book hotels, cars, cruises, everything. They get all the great deals that we provide. Then we have non-partner airline employees, and those are airline employees that may work for someone that we don't offer those flight tools with, or that they haven't partnered with us in that way. They cannot book flights, but they can book everything else. They can still get all the great deals on hotels, cars, cruises, and so forth. And then there's a third section, which is a little bit different and not really what I want to focus on today, but this more for kind of showing the full picture is we also have an invite a friend segment. So that invite a friend is airline employees can get onto our platform. They can invite their friends and family to the platform to receive the same great deals, though, again, without the flight access. And so when we think about all this, I think the key differentiator between us and our end users is we have to have these users create an account to either shop and or book with us. And really that narrows down who we can go and target from either a lead generation or a retargeting standpoint. We're not a traditional e-commerce platform where anybody who's traveling can get on our site. They have to a be verified as an airline employee or be verified as one of the employees' friends and families. And that makes it very challenging for us with any paid advertising to make sure that we're putting our message in front of the right audience. Um, does that make sense so far?
Yeah, no, that makes absolutely sense. And I feel like we're transitioning into sort of my next question here, which is with, y'all have such a niche audience, and since we're Mountain and we're here to talk about CTV, how did CTV specifically help you reach them?
Sure. So, again, I just mentioned the challenge of really making sure that for any lead generation campaign, we're going after airline employees and really specifically airline employees that we don't already have in our system. And so with other paid channels and platforms, we're able to kind of say, hey, on LinkedIn, we could say, hey, do you work for these airlines or do you work for these companies? Well, Mountain does that, but in I think a little bit of a better way in terms of the audiences that we're able to select. We can select audiences based off of titles like flight attendants or pilots, things like that. We can target people that say work for American Airlines employees, Delta employees, so on and so forth. And that really helps us, I think, make sure that we have a high confidence in who we're targeting on the platform from a lead generation standpoint. And I think, with any new platform that we go after, we really need to make sure that that's been accounted for. And we're able to do that very easily with Mountain.
Great. Now, you mentioned before you had lead gen, and you also mentioned retargeting. And from what I've heard is that retargeting has been a really strong driver for you. So, broadly speaking, can you give us a little more insight about how you're using retargeting and why you might think CTV is such a powerful channel for it?
Sure. So and kind of like I mentioned, we're a closed user group. People need to have an account to shop with us. And so one of the big conversations we've had over the last 6 months or so is how do we really leverage paid to segment and target our users better? And I think have some better down the funnel marketing to those users. And so we started real simply as just saying, hey, look, let's just target everybody in our CRM list. Let's target all of the people that visit the site and just general retargeting to them. And so I started as a very high level, high funnel marketing tactic. As we've gone on, we've started to say, okay, how do we think through some of the challenges of, well, we're targeting people that would have naturally come back anyways. And so there's a lot of ways that we've then gone through and said, okay, let's take out anybody who's converting more than once, or let's take out anybody who has converted in the last 30 days, things like that that help us really dial in and reach those users who may not have booked recently or who have come to the site and maybe they were invited by a friend or a family or they heard about ID90 through a coworker. They came to the site, said, I'll come back in and finish the registration process later. Then are shown a Mountain ad and are reminded of that need to go sign up for an account. And so we actually found once we started testing and really dialing in our retargeting campaign, we were driving new users at a much lower cost than our lead generation campaign, which that doesn't sound like that actually works out from a math perspective, but that's what we were seeing. And so not only were we seeing more efficiencies there, but then we were also seeing higher efficiencies from a booking standpoint. People had come to the site, they'd done their search, said, I'll keep shopping around, or I'm not ready to book today. They were shown our ads and then came back and booked. And so I think that there's a lot of ways that we've seen, retargeting really help us out, and I think it's going to continue to be a large part of our strategy moving forward.
I feel like a lot of the behavior that you just sort of mentioned of like searching, maybe getting to the site, looking around, deciding to come back to it later, and then getting hit with that mountain ad, and then that really being the driver. I feel like this is a great transition into sort of my next question, which is at Mountain, we're big proponents of a media mix that works together. Very, very similar to sort of what you just mentioned. So let's kind of double click into that a little bit more. So how do you think about CTV working alongside other channels like paid search and paid social? What unique value do you think CTV really kind of brings to that mix?
Sure. So, from our perspective, and kind of when I joined the company, we had a really paid search and social campaigns running, and that was about it from a paid standpoint. And so, on the paid search side, that was really a lead generation tool that we were using that was driving new accounts for us. People were searching either for us ID90 travel as a branded keyword, or they were searching for, airline employee rates or deals or things of that nature, and then signing up with us, and ultimately that would lead to a certain number of bookings. Paid social historically has been much more of a stronger retargeting platform for us, and so it's much more lower funnel, like, hey, it's abandoned cart, different things like that. We don't see a ton of new accounts from social. Most people that are either following us, organically, or people that we are reaching already have an account, whether that is, a lead generation tactic or not on social. And so we really, I think, steered both those channels in that direction. Mountain is a little bit of both. And I think where we see Mountain as much more of a probably higher funnel at the moment, but we want to start using it for lower funnel tactics. And I say this about anything, it all works together. If we have paid search running, that's going to help our paid social. If we have Mountain running, that's going to help paid search. It all works together. And I think from a CTV standpoint, it's a gentle reminder of us. It's not a hard sell. I mean, yes, there is an ad, but they're having to see it anyways, whether, they're watching, television or one of these OTT channels or whatnot. And so being able to think about Mountain from a brand recognition standpoint to stay top of mind and make sure that we are in the front of our end users' mind when they are starting to search and starting to book. And that's, I think, really where Mountain, some of the frequency that we're seeing on Mountain, I think really comes into play.
Yeah, I feel like something that we mention a lot with B2B advertisers, but I think it really goes for kind of everybody is that CTV can help you get into that initial consideration set so that you're top of mind and you're getting it at a time when maybe you're relaxing on the couch and maybe you're a little bit more leaned in than you might be, at the end of your workday on LinkedIn or something along those lines. So I think that that's a great point. All right, so now I feel like we've talked a lot about strategy and kind of the back behind the scenes of it. Now let's look a little bit maybe in front of the scenes with creative. So with this boom of CTV over the last several years, we've seen an uptick in creative solutions coming online that helps brands produce TV quality creative, kind of like our own QuickFrame. But even with these services, creating your first ever CTV ad can still feel a little daunting, especially if your only experience has been maybe creating static ads through search or social. So for those in our watching today that are maybe unfamiliar or even just like very new to how TV ads get made, how did you and your team approach producing CTV creative?
Sure. So, really one of my first initiatives when I was hired by ID90 was to get CTV with Mountain up and running. And so that doesn't leave a lot of time to go out and find an agency or to someone who can come in and create something from scratch. And so I started looking at what assets do we have already in house. And so we had a Who is ID90 video, a video that kind of introduced us. It was about 2.5 or 3 minutes long. And so we worked as a team to really cut down that video into a handful of 30-second and 15-second spots, and then add like a CTA at the end. And so with that, we were able to basically do it just for the cost of the time it took for us to do it. There wasn't a lot of initial startup costs because we already had a pretty high polished video that we were using anyways. And so that was, I think, a much easier way to come in and say, hey, look, we're not spending a whole lot more outside of the initial, I think, kind of ad spend. And then we did a lot of testing up front to figure out which of these different versions was going to work well, and really dial it in. And I think spent probably the first 3 months of our campaign just learning what was going to work, what was going to resonate, what didn't. And that's really how we got started from a creative standpoint, is just taking that existing creative and repurposing it for CTV.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's, you're hitting on a lot of the best practices that we love to tell people, especially when you're getting started. Looking back at your creative library, people will have a creative library. See how you can sort of repurpose that and make, working smarter, not harder, I feel like is one of the bigger sayings here. Now, I believe we actually do have that specific ad that you spoke about. So I think we can get that queued up to play here in a moment.
Take your adventures to new heights with ID90 Travel. You get access to insider rates on everything from hotels and cruises to car rentals and more. Last-minute deals for when you're feeling spontaneous. And a best-in-class booking experience, all in one place. So whether you're taking a much-needed break on your favorite beach or exploring someplace new, we'll help you spend less getting there so you can spend more where it counts. Sign up today to start exploring.
Fantastic. Really, really enjoy it. And I feel like we talked before about aspirational, like I love the script in here, and it just works perfectly, especially for a CTV ad. So I want to switch gears to sort of the other side of what you mentioned earlier in your strategy, retargeting. Did your approach change when you made CTV creative for those retargeting campaigns?
It did. And, like I had said with our lead gen, we had a introducing us video, Who is ID90 video, that we were able to that really transition well into a lead generation campaign. With retargeting, we didn't have those assets. And so we went back to the agency that initially created this Who is ID90 video and said, look, we want to do another couple spots with retargeting in mind. And again, it's a similar feel, overall similar messaging, but it's not necessarily introducing ID90. It's more of, here is a reminder of what you can do with ID90 Travel, and ultimately, we're just reminding them why it's important to come back, and a little bit more of a value prop with that group.
Great. Yeah, and I believe we have this video also queued up too.
As a travel insider, you have access to a world of travel possibilities. And with your members-only rates from ID90 Travel, maximizing your privileges has never been easier. Whether your next trip is a bucket list destination or simply a much-needed escape, you can save more with deals on everything from hotels to all-inclusive resorts to cruises and more. So wherever you're dreaming of traveling to next, get there with ID90 Travel. Start planning at ID90travel.com.
I feel like this is another great example of one of our best practices, which is, you don't have to make these gigantic adjustments to get something that feels fresh and new. Sometimes all you need to do is swap out that voiceover, or maybe it's an opening hook at the very beginning or something in the end card at the very end. And I feel like this is a really just really prime example of kind of all of the different ways that you can approach creating a CTV ad that doesn't have to feel like you're creating some giant multi-million dollar blockbuster ad like you'd see at, the big game in January, as we like to call it. So these are just really, really great examples. And I think it's given a nice little range of kind of options for anyone who maybe is watching today that maybe feel like they want to get into CTV, but aren't sure sort of creatively where to start. All right, so I'm going to switch gears one more time. You brought some data with you today, and I'd love to just drill down into some of these numbers. I'm sure we've actually touched on sort of bits and pieces of what led to these results, but can you just give us any more context behind sort of all of this success you've seen over the past year?
Sure, sure. So, the first one is just overall new accounts, driving a little over 10,000 new accounts that we attribute to Mountain. And again, those are across both our lead gen and retargeting campaigns. That's, I would say, one of the big reasons why we are currently in 2025 year to date. We're on track to have our best year ever from a new account generation standpoint. And, we think the additional spend in our campaigns in Mountain has really attributed to that growth. It's not the only reason, but I think it's a big reason why we're seeing that growth, not only just year over year, but across the last handful of years in general. I think beyond that, we are also seeing a much lower cost per new account, and I think an efficiency rate when we think about budget. So if we remove any hotel booking information, any kind of revenue ROI, just from a new account generation standpoint, we've seen a lot of really strong results. And that's even lower than what we see in our paid search campaigns, obviously more than or less than our paid social campaigns. And I think we've been able to get to a point where we can say, if we spend this amount, we're going to see about this many new accounts. And that's, I think, been really important for us so that there's less volatility and we can really utilize Mountain as a kind of planned a planned source of those new accounts. Does that all make sense, Jacob? I don't know if you have any additional questions there before I keep diving into more numbers.
No, that all makes sense. Please keep diving in.
No, perfect. So that's on the new account side. Once we start looking at the booking numbers, there were a couple kind of key things that we noticed. Number one is we are seeing accounts that booked for the first time that were created as far back as 2013. And again, I think that speaks to some of the retargeting efforts and really dialing in those campaigns. So not only are we seeing new bookers from Mountain accounts, but we're seeing first-time bookers from people that had never booked with us before we had started running Mountain campaigns. And that, I think, is, again, just a testament to reaching a new audience through our retargeting or reaching an existing audience that is not engaged. And that, I think, was a really, again, a strong use case for us to continue using and optimizing Mountain. And then the last note that we have here is our cost per hotel booking is the lowest of all paid channels. And so that's maybe a little bit of a dated metric, but I think it's important that not only are we seeing these new accounts and these bookers, but again, the efficiencies are there. And so, we don't know that we can attribute every single booking to Mountain. And I think that that's probably true for any e-commerce platform when they're considering how to really attribute the ROI to CTV. But we do feel like there's enough of an ROI there to justify the spend that we are spending.
All right, finally, as we start to sort of wrap up our conversation here, is there any advice that you would like to share with a brand? Could be travel, could be just in general for marketers that are looking to get started on CTV. Is there something that maybe you wish you'd known at the beginning of your journey?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think from my perspective, whenever we're introducing a new channel, it's really thinking through how it's going to fit into the rest of the marketing mix that we have. So, when we started with Mountain, it was very much look, we're going to use this as a lead generation tool. How do we get more new accounts? How do we target airline employees that we are not in front of? And as time went on, it was, let's just test this over and over and over again. Let's test things every single month. And the more that we tested, the more we got it dialed in. So, I would say with any new paid platform, it takes a little bit of time to ramp up. And so we use that time to, again, just see what worked and what didn't. And with with that said, we were, about 6 months in when we really decided, hey, let's shift our focus from lead generation to retargeting. And again, understanding how that fit within the rest of the ecosystem that we were creating. That I would say is going to be kind of my primary number one recommendation. And then number two is just testing. Testing different creative, testing the audiences. That's something that we do a lot of, not just within CTV, but across all of our platforms, both paid and organic. And the more that we test, the more that we learn. And I think the more invested we are into making this work. And so those would be kind of the big two things. I think beyond that, being able to really leverage Mountain from an audience standpoint, both your own as well as a lot of the niche audiences you can go out and target. That is, I would say, the biggest boon for me is being able to say, I want to go and target airline employees. I know that I can do that with Mountain. And that's using a niche audience. If, I know that there's a number of other ways that you can target through Mountain in terms of either by purchase habits or what their interests are, things like that. So I would say just explore all of those audiences as much as possible and try to find your niche or kind of who you're going after.
Yeah, I feel like testing is such a big thing for us here at Mountain, and I think it's one of the uniqueness of CTV and something that we people may have never gotten before on linear is the ability to really trust the data and follow it and find ways to improve and iterate through testing. And I think it's just one of the great things that CTV sort of brings to the table too, alongside everything else that you just mentioned. Well, Judge, I just want to say thank you so much for giving us a lot of food for thought on the travel industry at large and sort of how ID90 Travel has approached advertising on connected TV. For
Right,
everyone,
absolutely.
of course, thank you. For everyone who is in the room, I hope you have some actionable strategies or, at least some potent talking points that you can share back with your teams. Now, it looks like we do have some questions for the audience from the audience. So let's just jump right in. All right, first, Judge, someone is asking, what metrics actually matter to you when you are evaluating CTV?
Yeah, I think it's going to be similar to other paid platforms where, first and foremost, we want to see, the conversions that and making sure that not only are we sending people to the site and looking at traffic, but that they're actually converting. And that's going to be how we evaluate. And so for us, there's really two big conversions. There's either signing up for a new account or there is booking with us. And I think again that it goes back to what is the goal with each campaign and kind of how we're going through it. But I would say it's those metrics first, and then ultimately it's going to be how does this compare to other paid channels that we are spending money into from an efficiency standpoint? Are we driving new accounts at a more efficient rate than, let's say, paid social or paid search? Are we driving those bookings at a more efficient rate? And beyond that, it's what is the percentage of new accounts that are booking? And so those are a lot of the things that we're looking at from a just high level marketing standpoint, but then ultimately how is this impacting our bottom line and are we seeing more people return to our platform that we had not seen before?
Great. All right. So another question we have is, what has been one of the biggest challenges that you've faced with CTV so far, and kind of what are any steps that did you take to solve for those challenges?
Sure, I'd say it's an ongoing challenge that I'll bring up. I would say one of the big stigmas, maybe outside of marketing around CTV and television in general, is the lack of direct attribution. And so, one of the big conversations we've had internally is what is the incrementality that we are seeing from Mountain? And I know Mountain has a report, but we know by looking at our internal metrics and our internal users that hey, these people have been booking quite frequently. Let's figure out how to not target them. And I think a lot of it has been how do we make sure we're excluding the right audiences when it comes to getting to a point where we can really trust in the ROI numbers that we are seeing. Because I think that there are a lot of things where it's like, yes, we are seeing, strong ROI numbers, but again, it's from people that are booking already. And I think that that's been one of the big challenges as we've talked about the future of Mountain, how much money we're spending in it, what our strategies are, is that thought process of how do we know we are targeting people that uh, have not either booked recently or are not engaged with us. And that's really the big conversation we're having about everything. But I would say that is one of the biggest I think challenges internally from an organizational standpoint that we've been facing. And I think in order to get around that, have been not just taking the mountain metrics as truth, but then also comparing it directly with our internal database. What are we seeing from user activity on our end? Where are these people coming from? Are these people actually booking? Things of that nature. I think that that's been, I think, very eye opening to say, look, I need to be able to say yes with confidence that Mountain is a strong ROI producer for us. And so I can go in and say, look, this is how much we've spent. This is how much we've seen from people that haven't booked in 2 years or are first time bookers. And is that number higher than what we've spent? The answer is yes. So we're able to say yes, that is having an impact, and yes, we are driving this much traffic, but that's I think an uphill conversation internally, and probably a conversation that I would not be surprised if a lot of people had with their financial or leadership teams.
All right, we have another question here that kind of jumps into that ROI point that you just made. Could you speak to a little bit about how ID90 Travel tracks conversions from CTV?
Sure. So we have a pixel set up through Google Tag Manager that pumps data back into Mountain based off of the interactions that we see on Mountain. So we kind of jerry rigged it because we have we have different types of conversions. We have not only the sign up, but then the bookings. So we actually then drill down into each conversion that we see and kind of segment it out internally. And so I kind of just take each one of the different conversion types and put it into its own bucket. So, we know that we drive, about 1,500 new accounts per month from Mountain. But then we can also look at what are our hotel bookings, what are our car bookings, flight bookings, everything like that, and look at them individually. And so we had in that pixel data being pushed through about each different type of conversion so that we're able to then do that on the back end on our end. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Perfect.
Okay.
One more question here, and this kind of double clicks into some more of the targeting talking points that you just mentioned, but a little bit more about your specific niche audience and sort of your kind of targeting strategy and apparatus. So the question is, how does Mountain know who works for airlines and who doesn't? Where do you get this data, and can advertisers upload custom audiences to the platform?
Yeah, that I can answer the second part of that for sure. I don't know how Mountain structures their audiences, but we're able to go in from a user standpoint, to go in and say, hey, I do want to select this audience to target. From our perspective, I can go in and upload a CRM list into Mountain to say, hey, I either want to include or exclude this list, and I think that that's we talked about this a little bit earlier, but that's where I feel like we need to get smarter as an organization to say, I want to target these type of users who are on our platform. I want to target people that have only booked flights and show them hotel and cruise messaging, or vice versa. People who have only booked hotels, how do I get them involved in the cruise side of the business? And so there's I think a lot more opportunity for us to really get specific with how we segment our audience, but we're able to upload those CRM lists into Mountain whenever we need to.
All right, so it looks like we have time for one more question. So going back to your points about retargeting, is your approach to retargeting on CTV any different from how you approach retargeting on other channels? Is there anything unique about it that I should keep in mind?
I think with some of the other channels, there's probably a less expensive, I think, creative need, and so we feel like we have a lot more segments and a lot more lower funnel targeting through like paid social, for example. With Mountain, and this is, I think, on our end, we have been working through creating new creative that is, I think, a little bit more specific to each of our different segments. And not that we haven't done that yet, but I think it's, or not that we don't want to do that with Mountain. I think we just haven't gotten there today. And so that I would say is the big difference from what we've done so far. But I think we would like to get more audiences, get more campaigns, get more segmentation in Mountain so that we can put the right messaging in front of each of those segments. And I think bring it more closely aligned to what we're doing through social and some of our other retargeting efforts.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much, Judge, for joining us today. And I want to thank all of you for tuning in for today's forum. Now, if you were so glued to this session that you didn't take as many notes as you'd have liked, don't worry. We love a good post-show email, and you'll get one in your inbox with a recording of this session in the near future. Now, if you enjoyed this discussion and you want to watch more like it, you can check out our back catalog of on-demand events at mountain.com/webinars, where you'll also be able to find out what we have coming up next. Thank you so much again for joining us today, and we'll see you at the next forum.